Hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday to you. I'm so excited to be back with you tonight for another episode of My Way Conversations with Entrepreneurs Doing Business Outside the Box. This is my first time back since we moved a couple of weeks ago, and I'm coming on here with my 1-900 voice this evening because my throat has been all kinds of messed up for a few days, but I'm glad to be back with you tonight. We have an incredible guest coming up for you this evening. Kathleen Gage is here. Cannot wait for you to meet her. I was a guest on her podcast, and you're just going to love what she has to share with you this evening. I have to give you a little bit of an update. I know we were absent 2 weeks ago. We were supposed to have Tish Robbie on the show, but that was literally the day before we were going to move. And what happened is that I realized that she actually lives 1.2 miles down the road from me here in my new house. So we said we're just going to do it in person. So we're really excited to get that scheduled back in. But I had the absolute honor and privilege of attending Tish's book launch over at her house, actually about a week ago now. And it was just a couple days after we got here to beautiful Mystic, Connecticut. If you guys know Mystic Pizza with Julia Roberts, that's right where we are. And so I went to Tish's house, and she has a brand new book called Mystic by the Sea is the Best Place to Be. It's a beautiful children's book. As you guys know, if you saw her on Project Joy live with me back on Dr. Seuss Day, Tish is one of the amazing authors who has the privilege of writing for the Dr. Seuss brand. And so really excited to sit down with her and do her episode of My Way live and in person coming up for you, hopefully within the next couple of months here. So wanted to give you a little update on that. If you were looking for a couple of weeks ago and you're like, where was she? She's going to be coming up soon, and we're going to be live and in person. It's going to be really exciting. So really thrilled about our episode this evening because our guest she wears many hats, and look, we're used to that on the Breakthrough Show Network, right? So she is a business consultant, a speaker, an author, a marketing strategist, and I personally feel very aligned with her branding because she is all about vegan visibility. I have shared several times on many shows that my family and I have been vegan since 2017. And so this is something that I'm really passionate about as on a personal note, but then also in my business as well, about sharing that part of our lives. So without further ado, I want to bring her onto the show so that you can meet her, get to know her. Let's bring on Kathleen Gage. Kathleen,
Hello,
welcome.
hello. It's so great to be here, Jessica. And I'm seeing some familiar faces in the audience. So thank you for being here. Just excited.
I'm thrilled to have you here, and because we had a really great conversation on your podcast as well. And as I said, I'm really, I'm excited about what you're doing in the world because I can tell you from my own personal experience, when we became vegan, I had those moments of like, should I even mention this? Like, is it something? Are people going to stop watching when I say that dreaded V word? Like, what is happening here? So I'm really excited that you're doing what you're doing in this space, and just want to thank you for that right out of the gate.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting about that whole concern that we have about anything
Right.
in our life of who we are and what we stand for, that if we say the truth of who we are, yes, we are going to have people who say, oh, no, too weird for me, like vegan. People have said, oh, that's a little too weird for me. And it's like, compassion is weird. Okay, that's fine. But there's also that whole group of people that get attracted to what we have as a result of us being transparent.
Right. I agree 100%. And I think for me, part of it was like you hear the jokes all the time about how do you know someone's vegan? You don't, but they'll tell you, like, kind of thing, and so it was like I didn't I've always been very adamant about, like, this is my way of life. This is how my family lives, but I'm not going to, like, never talk to someone again if if they don't eat the way that I eat or
Right.
I believe. But people think that that's what I'm going to do. And so it makes it challenging. I do want to say hi really quickly. Angela was joining us to support you from South Beach. I bet it's beautiful there today. Miss Brittany's here this evening. Hello, Miss Brittany. Donnell here is today. Hey, Mr. Jackson. And Adam is here joining us from a very late England. Aren't you supposed to be sleeping, Adam? That's what I need to know. So Kathleen, did you always work in this vegan visibility space? Like, did you always feel tell us how you got started and what you're doing?
That is such a great question. And the answer is a flat out no.
Yeah.
It's actually been a pretty recent change in my business. I've had my business 28 years, actually this month, and just celebrated. Oh my gosh,
Wow.
28 years. And I was going along quite nicely, and I've gone through many, many transformations in my business where I started out working with government agencies. Then I got a contract with a seminar company, and I was traveling all over the place, including Canada and Europe. And I'm from Oregon, and at the time I was from Salt Lake City, Utah. And that evolved into working with small businesses. That evolved into working with solo entrepreneurs, but it was pretty much general business. And I didn't niche down into the vegan space because at that time I wasn't vegan. I became vegan just about 4 years ago. And when the pandemic hit, my business took a real big hit. As a keynote speaker, I was out traveling all over the place. And literally overnight, about 80% of my business was wiped off the books. I mean, there was no turning back on that. Conferences had been canceled and contracts were getting canceled. And, technically, when you're a speaker, you get a 50% deposit to hold the space, but there are certain exceptions. When 9/11 hit, we were refunding the deposits that clients had put down because you have to look at each situation and say, okay, ethically, what is the right thing to do? So it actually was as a result of the pandemic and really doing some soul searching around what I wanted my business to represent. And I actually had been cautioned by carnivore business owners who said, oh, don't niche down to the vegan market because there's not enough business. It's going to be the worst decision you could make. And I have to tell you, it was the best decision I could make because I quickly rose to a position of influence as a result of using the very strategies that I teach my clients. I implemented those into my own business. And the first thing I did that got me noticed very quickly was a summit where I brought in 10 other vegan marketers and we did a marketing summit. And we're actually going to do the second one in probably about 3 or 4 months. And it's a marketing seminar. It's not teaching people how to be vegan. It's not teaching them how to eat plant-based. It's not teaching them how to be a nutritionist. It's how do you market your business once you've established what your business is.
I love that. I love that. And I think that that's a fear that some people have. Like, okay, so it's a vegan that's running this summit, and so they're gonna like force me to be vegan after that, and then and because I think people are afraid of like taking those babies or exploring the feeling like somebody's going to force something onto them, right? And so I love that you put it out there like, look, we're just vegans that are just amazing at what we do, and we're going to teach you how to do marketing, and it's going to be amazing. I can't wait for that. I didn't know you were doing another one, so now I'm excited.
Well, I have a partner on this one, V-Lynn Hopkins, who is out of Atlanta, Georgia. And it turns out that we actually met probably about 10 years ago at Niche Affiliate Marketing. I was speaking at the conference and she was there as an attendee. And we actually connected there. And we recently worked on an event together. It was actually the Plant-Based Ambassador Certification Conference. And she was the back-end technical person. I was the marketer, MC, keynote speaker. And that was the first in-person speaking engagement that I did in 2.5 years. And I have to tell you, I was so excited to be on the platform, but I will tell you, the travel was not fun. And I really kind of made a decision that unless it's just something I can't say no to, I really don't want to get on a plane anymore. I'm 68 years old and I'm thinking, why do I need to get on a plane at my age? I just don't need to do it. And there's plenty of opportunities in my local market, Portland, and then the Bay Area of California. But the conference was so wonderful. And so V-Lynn and we really connected there. And we were talking about what can we do to really serve the market. And I told her about the summit and we decided well, why don't we do it together? And we've already got 7 speakers lined up who are really, really powerful marketers within the vegan space. And again, we're not going to try to influence anybody to become vegan, because that's something that, in a sense, takes on a life of its own. When people really understand the truth of factory farming, when they understand the truth of compassion to animals, of health, of the environment, people start making better choices. Sometimes, not everybody, but sometimes.
Yeah. And even just opening people's eyes to this is what's going on is important, I think, too, because it's not stuff that you see all the time. I mean, look at the big corporations and everything. They spend millions of dollars on billions of dollars on, all this advertising for the other side of things. So we don't often, it's not in your face like everything else is. I want to acknowledge, first of all, you said you're how old, Kathleen?
I'm 68.
No one believes that. Stop lying.
Let me pull out my driver's license.
No one believes you. And also, Angela is out there, 64. Listen, I cannot tell you how often when I went to that party at Tish's house last week, and they're like, do you have a family? And I'm like, yes, I have 6 children. They're like, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's the vegan. It's the
Absolutely.
vegan lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I love it. Yes. And yes, she said you are incredibly brilliant at marketing strategies and an amazing keynote speaker.
Thank you.
Your work has directly helped her in her business. She's very grateful to you.
Thank
I
you.
love that. I love that. So you got into the vegan visibility space, the vegan space and what you're doing. It was easy right out the gate, right? Like you just flew and that was
Well, not exactly, because one is I did get cautioned by quite a few people. It's like, what are you doing?
Right.
There's not enough market there. There's, your business is going to die. And it's like, well, I went through 2020. I made it through 2020. And if I can make it through that, I can make it through anything. I made it through 2008. I made it through 9/11. I mean, there have been times that my business was just riding high, and then literally overnight, because of situations out of my control, it was a crash and burn. However, one of the things I realized that I was smart enough to do early on is I have investments, I have savings, I have ways that I have a nest egg, if you will, so that when something happens, that I'm not with my back against the wall and having to make decisions that would be poor decisions and badly timed decisions. But really what I did is I actually looked at my situation. Okay, if I was a client of mine, what would I advise my client? And I actually put a blueprint together, because I work with my clients on blueprints, and it's all around marketing and visibility. And how I came up with the name for my business, I was actually on a morning run. I go on usually daily runs, and I live near the river, and I was out running, and I was thinking, what would be a good name for my business? And all of a sudden it just started coming to me: vegan visibility. You help people with visibility, vegan visibility. And it was just like it stuck with me. So as soon as I got home, I checked on the URL. It was available. I bought it. And then I worked with my team to rebrand. So it was not a real simple black and white decision. There was a lot of process of changing hosting companies. We changed my website. So there were a fair amount of investments that I had to be willing to make into my company. And that's the thing that I always advise people to look at: is it's not just about making a decision, but what comes with that decision, and what is the expense of that decision, and what's the benefit of that decision. But it didn't take long before I was able to really raise my visibility within the vegan market. And then from there, I've just been very strategic about the choices that I'm making and the people that I choose to work with.
Right. I mean, you talked briefly about, just being yourself, and how sometimes we feel like, we can't be ourselves, put ourselves out there. And that's what this show is all about. It's about doing things your way, when maybe you have those people in your ear going, there's not enough market for that. You can't do business the way that you're saying you can. And then us going, watch me, watch me do this and make this happen. And I think you're right. A lot of times, a lot of people just don't know that the market exists, because I know here we have a big food truck festival that's coming down the street. They have 0 vegan vendors, 0. But there was just Compassion Fest last week, and it had over 20 vegan vendors. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and because the guy said there's just not enough market. Yes, there is, and they were sold out. Like they just don't know it's there. Do you find that that's the case with people in their businesses? Like they just don't realize there's a market there, maybe in whatever their niche is.
Absolutely. Whatever it is that somebody has a passion for, they've probably done some research and they've immersed themselves into it. So by the time I made this decision, I knew that there was a fairly decent sized market to work with. Was everybody in the vegan market going to be a potential client? No, absolutely not. Because there are those people in the vegan space that believe that you should give your services away. And that's not logical from a business perspective, because when you're in business, you have to be profitable in order to do your humanitarian work, if you will, or your volunteer work, your fundraising, whatever you may do. So it really is looking at the match of what I bring to the experience and the types of clients that want to work with me. And I had somebody who recently reached out to me who was a client 16 years ago, and she goes, is it an absolute line in the sand that you will not work with people who are not vegan? And I said, no, it's not. I said, I don't advertise that fact, but if I have somebody who's aligned with my values and they respect where I'm coming from and they don't make meat jokes and things like that, I would consider working with them. And we're now in conversation of me helping her put a summit together and a book launch. And I helped her with her first book launch 16 years ago. So I think for me, it's looking at the global perspective of what I want to do, what's the legacy I want to leave, and yet being flexible enough to take things on a case-by-case basis. But I will tell you, there are certain types of companies I absolutely will not work with. Anybody that does any harm to animals, I had somebody with my podcast shows, they said, why don't you bring somebody who runs a factory farm on your show? And I said, why don't I not? Why would I even bring somebody to talk about factory farming? We don't need to do that. And so there are certain things that as business owners, we have to look at and say, okay, this is a fit, this isn't a fit. And it doesn't make the other person wrong necessarily. Now, in some cases, I do believe people are wrong for the choices they make. And yet it's not necessarily my place to change them. It's my place to live by example of what is possible.
Right. I love that so much. And I mean, that's similar. We in our home, we don't allow any animal products. So when people come to visit me, they come to stay from out of town. Some of y'all are watching right now. Your eyes are about to pop out of your head. I don't allow animal products in my home. I will cook you an amazing vegan meal, or I can direct you down the road to where they serve other things. But that's how we operate in our home. And so, and I tell people that. And then it's also like I know you do for your podcast draw that line in the sand. Yes, and I wanted to talk about that for a minute, because you've had some interesting experiences with people booking into your podcast and then finding things out later.
Well, I do a pre-interview with people. And before I even do that, the first question I ask people, because you can kind of see behind a thin veil, but the first question I'll ask is, how long have you been vegan? And if they say, well, I'm not 100% vegan, I'll say, well, then we can stop the discussion right here, because I only allow people who are 100% vegan, non-dairy, non-animal eaters on my show. And it doesn't mean that vegan in every area of their life, because that goes in degrees. It's not like somebody becomes vegan and then all of a sudden they get rid of their car that has the leather seats in it, or their Western boots, or whatever, their leather jacket. It's a process for some people, quicker for some than others. But that is where I draw the line. And I've had people who have actually said, do you realize who I am? And it's like, yeah, you're a carnivore. It's okay. It's like, I'm not going to judge you, but you're not going to be on my show. And most of the people are like pretty cool with that. And they say, well, if I ever go 100% vegan, can I contact you? And I said, yeah, but please at least be a year vegan, because I don't want somebody that goes vegan for a week and then they go back to being a carnivore, because that's not really what a vegan is. But I'll tell you, there was an interesting situation the other day. It was on Twitter, and Papa Murphy's Pizza, which I used to love, Papa Murphy's chicken garlic pizza. That was like my favorite. And so Papa Murphy said, what's your favorite pizza out of the 4? And I said, well, it used to be this, but I really wish that you could offer a vegan option. That was all I said. I had this troll that just started attacking me, saying, why should they change for you as a vegan? Why don't you just take meat off the pizza? And I'm like, okay, dude, here's the deal. It's like,
you're the only vegan the planet.
I know. It's like, and then he said, why don't you just go to restaurants that cater to people like you? And I said, actually, the truth of the matter is a lot of restaurants would probably increase their bottom line if they catered to vegans with options. Not that their whole menu should become vegan, but to offer options.
Right. Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it goes to that awareness of people just not being aware that the market is there, that there are people out there that are hungry. Now, this is a really interesting thing. So we're renting a house here for a year, and our landlord owns 3 restaurants locally. They are like Irish pubs.
Mhm.
And so my husband told him when we met him that we're vegan, and he's like, "Oh, I have vegan options on the menu. I'd be stupid not to."
Wow.
And that's like literally the first time we've heard someone say that phrase, "We'd be stupid not to," because it is
Wow.
such a growing market, and not even just grow. I hate saying just growing, but it's people are becoming more aware that we exist.
Yes. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. It's like people are becoming more aware. And I think that was one of the greatest blessings of the pandemic is people were glued to their computers. They were doing more research. There were more people being vocal about being vegans. And what you said about how do you know if somebody's a vegan? They'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I actually just yesterday did a blog post where I did a meme with that in there saying, this is the running joke about vegans. And then I went into all the advertising dollars. It's actually $14 billion a year that the food industry spends on ads to convince us to eat at fast food restaurants, drink the milk, eat the cheese, eat the meat, all of that, $14 billion. And when people say that vegans push their agenda, I would invite people to sit down with a pen and paper for an hour, watch TV, and watch all the animal-based commercials, food products, and then how many prescription drugs right after that are being run to get rid of the heartburn, to get rid of the cancer, to get rid of the diabetes, to get rid of the whatever that you got as a result of the food. So it was just interesting that you said that. And just yesterday, I posted that blog post.
I love it. Well, and it's so true. Like we just sometimes we can only speak what we know. And this is one of the reasons that as a vegan, I don't push myself. I don't push veganism on anybody. I just live the way that I live.
Right.
And I don't do that because I also remember where I came from. We went vegan in 2017, and earlier that year and all the years prior, I only knew what I knew. I only knew what was in front of my face. And so I remember that about people. Now I can present the way that I live, but I remember at the end of the day, they only know what they know.
Absolutely. That is so spot on because I used to be a heavy, heavy, heavy meat eater. I mean, it was like, and when I ate my meat, the rarer, the better. That was just the way I was raised. My mother was European, and Sunday treat was a big roast, So like many people that I interview on my show, we come from a background where it's meat and potatoes. And there are a lot of people that I grew up with that were hunters. And now I look back and I realize that I did the best I could with what I knew. I just didn't know. And the thing also to look at is that once people become vegans, often they go through a period of grieving for the actions that we took of all the animals we were responsible for killing, and we have to forgive ourselves. When that hit me, I was about 6 months into the whole process, and I became plant-based in September 2018. 6 months into it was when I identified as a vegan, and I literally started crying in the grocery store of like, how could I have been so stupid? And I was beating myself up, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And this is where I was able to talk to some other vegans who had been vegan for a longer period of time and let them know what I was going through. And they were like, it's okay. You did what you knew to do. Now you can do it differently. And it's like, okay. And it's not that we get flippant about it because I am very pained by all the ignorance I had around it. But what I can do and why I have my shows, why my business is Vegan Visibility, why I like to work with vegan business owners. I want to do what I can within the gifts that I've been given to raise the awareness around a different way of life and what I consider a very spiritual way of life of not putting any dead products into my body.
Right, right. And I love what Angela shared about your blog post being excellent, filled with data and stats. And I think the reason this is so important is because so many of us speak on emotion. We're
Mhm.
upset about something, we're hurt about something, we heard something and it triggered us, so now we're going to react. And I think it's so important to put the facts out there and say this is what the facts are about veganism, about animal consumption, about whatever it is that we're talking about this topic, and because then we can be taken seriously and it's not just an
Absolutely.
emotional topic anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for that, Angela. I appreciate it. And, Angela is a great ambassador for the plant-based and the vegan movement because she posts videos all the time of her exercise. She does yoga unbelievably. I mean, I'm like, how does she get her legs to do that? I mean, I do my morning yoga with Adrian on YouTube and Jen Hillman on YouTube, and I try to stretch one leg up, and I'm like, okay, Angela
It's
does it
not
a little bit
happening over
differently.
here. No amount of vegan diet is going to make me a contortionist. I try so hard,
Yeah.
and it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But so I want to get back to this topic of, just being yourself in business. What do you think are the biggest things that hold people back from just marketing themselves exactly who they are? And a second part to this question I want to ask, is there ever anybody that you would say, okay, don't completely be yourself, don't completely put that out there?
Wow. Um, with the second part of the question, right off the top of my head, I can't think of who
Mm,
that would be. I think that it's being yourself within the guidelines of your industry. For example, a rock and roll a musician, for example, in the rock and roll genre, they may dress one way and look one way, and that could fit for them. But maybe as an attorney in corporate America, that may not fit. But you never
right.
know. I mean, things are definitely changing. I remember when I started changing the way I was dressing to do keynote presentations, I used to wear business suits when I did keynotes. And I actually had a consultant who said, "You look like a frumpy old grandmother. Get rid of that. Start wearing blue jeans, wear knee-high boots, wear leather jackets." That was pre-veganism. And so that's how I dressed to go on stage. And my aunt, who at the time was probably about 80, she goes, "That's not professional." I said, "Within my industry, it's very professional." And it was so interesting because people said I looked much more relaxed, and I just looked more like
Right.
myself rather than being in the business suit. And I think the reason people don't is because they are afraid of being judged. But something that I learned many, many years ago is regardless of what path you take in life, you're going to be judged by some for being spot on, and you're going to be judged by others for being wrong. So, I think we can look at our political structure right now. I think we can look at a lot of the issues that are going on today, and people are really attached to what their beliefs are, regardless of what side of the fence that they're on. And we can look at another person and say, "You're absolutely wrong," but we don't know what encouraged them to form the beliefs that they have. And one of the things I love doing is actually having conversations with people who have opposing points of view from me, and really having a conversation, not an argument, but a conversation. So tell me, what is it about that makes you believe that way? And if we can have that conversation, then we can actually realize that oftentimes we have more in common than we have different. And I'll give you a great example. I've been with my wife for 33 years, and right now what the Supreme Court is threatening to do, to
Right.
overturn the legal marriage,
Right.
that's frightening to me. Some people say, "Well, you've been with her for 33 years, you're protected, you love each other." It's like, that's not the point. There's a whole community of people that are at risk, and there's
Right.
families that are at risk. There's children that are at risk of being taken away. And it's not about just being in this for myself. It's just like being a vegan. I'm not just vegan for myself. I'm vegan for the animals, I'm vegan for the environment, and I'm vegan for other people. As I see what's going on with people's health, I mean, the amount of disease that's going on today is so frightening, and a lot of that is preventable. So if I can do anything to help others and educate people, then I will. But the fear is, I remember years ago, I would not talk about having a wife. And I mean, it was
Right.
like off limits to me. And that there was a big part of myself that I was hiding. And by hiding that, people didn't get to know the real me. So the more that we are truly who we are and we look at our motives for why we share what we share. And, I actually have been in recovery for 38 years. I've got a lot of dings on my life, It's like I've traveled a pretty interesting road. But my sponsor said, whenever you do anything, check your motives. Like, why are you going to make amends to somebody? Are you doing it because it's going to make you feel good, or is it really the right thing to do? So as we do things in life, we have to ask ourselves, is this really the right thing to do? Or am I doing it to be boastful? Am I doing it to show off? Am I doing it because I feel insecure and I just want to get, I want to pretend like I'm okay? And I think in the last few years, a lot of people have literally been rocked to their core around self-confidence. And for me, I know what I need to do to make sure I take care of my self-confidence. And one is have a really strong connection to my higher power. Another is be connected with my animals. Another is take care of myself through what I eat, because I know that I actually could get into eating patterns that would really mess with my emotions. And I think that's, for me, what I love about being a plant-based eater is it helps me to stay really even keel.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things that I love about you, Kathleen. I could go any different directions with this, but I will say this. I would love to know if you feel that there are any issues within the vegan community. The reason I ask you this question is because you mentioned about the laws, some of the political things that are going on right now. And one of the things that was really challenging for me when all of that came down about Roe versus Wade and all of that in the beginning is that for me, I try very hard not to just be vegan by what I put in my mouth. Veganism is about compassion.
Mhm.
And I really try to listen and understand where people are coming from. And the biggest thing that broke my heart was coming onto social media the next day and seeing everybody rip each other apart and saying, well, if you believe this, unfriend me. Don't talk to me. You're not in my family. You're not my friend. And it broke my heart.
Yes.
And we see this so often in the vegan community as far as like, well, if you eat meat, then we can't do this. And if you go to, and that division literally hurts me in a very big way. And so that's one of the things that I would love to see improve is just that mental level of compassion. What are your feelings about that?
I really appreciate what you just said in the question that you asked, because I think if anything right now, we need to be more compassionate than ever towards ourselves, towards each other, towards people that have different points of view. And yet when a wrong is done, when a wrong is truly done, that's where we draw the line. Like if I see elder abuse or I see child abuse or animal abuse, that's where I draw the line. It's not like I'm going to try to have a compassionate talk. It's like, no, you're going to stop, and you're going to stop right now. But as far as like within the vegan community, I know there is a lot of divide. And there was a question, and again, it was on Twitter. I happen to enjoy the Twitter platform. And somebody said, would you ever date a vegan, or would you ever date a non-vegan? As a vegan, would you ever date a non-vegan? Yes or no? And I said no, because I'm married, so it's kind of like my answer is easy. But I
Nice
said,
out.
yeah, it's like, otherwise I would have to be dating, but quite seriously, it's like, I said, but if I was dating, I probably would choose to try to date vegans, but I can't say, I don't know, because I'm not in that circumstance. But
Right.
I've heard of people actually leaving their spouses because their spouse wouldn't go vegan. I would never even consider that, because Karen happens to be very, very empathetic with me. She happens to be very respectful. I do most of the cooking. That's kind of our agreement. Okay, if you want vegan food, then you do the cooking. It's like, okay, I'll be happy to. And I love cooking. I didn't used to like it, but I love cooking because there's a lot of love that I put into it. My mother-in-law lives on our property, and whenever I cook for her, I said, now try to guess what's in here. And she'll guess, and I'll say, and the best ingredient of all, love. I put love in there. And I mean that. It's like, so in my family, people are not necessarily, like my sister is not vegan. My niece and her husband, they're not 100% vegan. They're moving towards that. Their kids are not. But when anybody comes to visit, I invite them to be open-minded and let me do the cooking. And then, if they don't like what I've cooked, they can go down the road a piece. But I think that if anything, now more than ever, we need a lot of compassion, because we are being manipulated by the media. We're being manipulated by social media. And if people could step back and look at the whole situation and say, okay, why is there so much divide now more than ever? There's always been divide. I mean, it's just that social media amplifies it now. But I think that each of us, if we could just take a step back and say, what can I do to serve today? What can I do to make the world a kinder place? Because ultimately, that's what being vegan is about, is to be kind. And when vegans attack each other, it's like, I think you're missing the mark here.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's living by example.
Right. Right. I love that. I love that. So, and I have to shout out Kevin Kiley really quick, because he came over last week and we grilled some vegan sausages and everything else. And Kevin likes his meat, you know, and he was like, this is so good. I would have never known that it wasn't me. So I was so happy about that he came in.
That's what I do too. I go, oh, yay.
Yay. That's like my personal goal when people come over that are not vegan, and I'm like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Give me an hour and we're gonna have this whole thing.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, the thing I had to learn is not to shove it down people's throats. It's just like when I got sober, you know, I thought everybody should get sober. And the reality is not everybody needs to. And so for me, it's like I had to kind of step back and not push my beliefs on other people, because the more we push our beliefs on people, the more they're going to resist. And so it's really being available. And that's what this event recently that we did, the certification program through WeDidIt.health. It was all about having psychologists who were the speakers. I was one of the only ones who wasn't a psychologist or a doctor. And they were talking about various language patterns that would make people more receptive to hearing the message, and to looking for those opportunities and openings where we could have a discussion, rather than saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's like when they asked a question, then we could provide resources, but to know when to stop also, because, you know, what happens when a vegan gets asked a question? This is the new joke. It's like, they don't stop answering, you know, so it's kind of like, okay, slow it down and don't overwhelm.
Yeah. You have to know your audience and read the room a little bit. You know, if you see the glaze starting, the vegan glaze happening over here, then you just back up a little bit. It's okay. And the truth of the matter is it can be a lot for people right out of the gate. Like I remember so many people let me ask you this. When you went vegan, what was like your food that you were like, oh God, I can't believe I'm about to give this up?
You know, actually nothing. Nothing, because, you know, once I have a very black or white personality, because it's like when I quit drinking, and I've actually had people as far in as 35 or 36 years who'd say, well, it's been a long time since you've had a drink. Don't you think you could have just one? And it's like, why would I even play with that? You know, I know what my life was like back then. I'm not gonna mess with it. But when I made the decision, it wasn't that I decided to go vegan. I went plant-based, and I did it because of inflammation. I was 64 at the time, and I was getting really bad inflammation, and I'm a writer. And so it was hindering my writing ability. And so as I researched it, it indicated, okay, if you give up meat and dairy, you might get rid of the inflammation. Read Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Fuhrman. So I thought, I'll give it a week. And if it goes away in a week, okay, I'll try it for a little while longer. Within 2 days, the inflammation was gone. And then within a week, I dropped like 5 pounds, and I wasn't dieting. After week 2, I had better recovery time on my running. I lost some more weight. I had more energy. I was thinking clear, and I was like, dang, this is really good. Well, within 3 months, I dropped like 38 pounds, and I was starting to get a little too thin, which was interesting. What I realized was I wasn't eating enough, because I was comparing the size of what I was eating to what I used to eat. And it was much more calorie dense before. So I had to make sure that I was eating enough. And so for me, once I made the decision and I did a lot of research, I just couldn't, I didn't feel like I was missing anything.
Right. Well, I mean, and I tend to be very black and white like that as well. Once we were done, like that was it. But there was one, because I grew up here in New England, because my dad was a fisherman, the seafood was something that was really, really challenging for me. But one of the things that I learned, especially not just with the seafood, but with any of the big Italian meals that I ate with my family growing up, it's an emotional attachment. 100%. It's the memories
Yes.
of going fishing with dad. It's the sitting around, Sunday dinner with the family and the big pot of sauce being passed, that's what I was attached to. And so for me, it was like, okay, I didn't miss it as much when I could replicate that emotion that was attached to the food.
You just hit it on the head again. I mean, you're really like targeting in on like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Both of my parents passed away. My dad in 2009 and my mom in 2011. And there was a lot of emotional attachment to food and the rituals around food with my parents. And my mom being from Europe, Sunday dinners were a big deal.
Yep.
It was like the roast and the potatoes and the
Yeah.
escargot and all that. And I don't feel like, because they were gone, I don't feel like I was giving up those rituals because those were already gone. And to this day, I still every day think about my parents. But the rituals, I agree that could be something. And so it's creating new rituals. And I remember the first holiday season where I did ask my immediate family, and I said, for the people who were going to be there, I said, can we try a non-meat based dinner? And there was some pushback, and I said, please, can we just try it? And I said, if it's no good, I will never ask you again. They loved it. I made a portobello dish with a cream sauce that was all vegan, and it was amazing. I even amazed myself. It's like, wow, who took over my body to cook dinner? But it was great. And so I think what it is creating new rituals. So you really, you address something very important there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now that we're all hungry, we need to know what are the different ways that people work with you, Kathleen? What are your ideal clients? Tell us a little bit about what people can expect working with you.
Oh, I thank you for asking. Well, I look for people who have an established business. I'm not looking for people who have a business idea and they want to start a business, but truly people, whether it be a speaker, a consultant, a small business owner. I've worked with nonprofits that want to gain a lot of visibility, and they're willing to roll up their sleeves and they're willing to get out of their comfort zone and do the things that will get them the visibility so that they can actually do the things they need to do. Before I say yes to working one-on-one with a client, we actually have a few phone conversations or Zoom conversations. They fill out an assessment, and I really evaluate if they're ready to work at the level that we would be working, because I'm kind of a no nonsense kind of person where, okay, many of you might know who the vegan publisher is, Metalli. I worked with her on her book launch. Yeah. And I have to tell you, if every client was like Metalli, I would be in literally, excuse the expression, hog heaven. I would be just like delighted, because not only was she eager to find out what needed to be done, she offered her own ideas. We brainstormed ideas. When I said, this is what you can do, I would give her some ideas. She would go out and do it. And she wouldn't sit there and second guess her decision to contract me. And that's the thing I love when I work with clients, is they made a decision to hire me. So live with your decision and let's go full board ahead. So I like people who like to play big.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And the fun fact of the night is that our guest in 2 Tuesdays is actually Metalli.
Oh, okay. She is such a delight. I adore her.
Her energy is just beautiful. And when we had our initial conversation, we just couldn't get off the damn phone. It was like, okay, we're going to book you in, and I'm going to try to leave some more conversation for the show.
Right. Well, she's going to be a part of our next summit. She was a part of the first summit. She'll be a part of the next one. And one thing, I have to say about Metalli, it's like we could have the Metalli fan club now. She's the real deal. What you see is what you get. What you see on social media is who she is. She doesn't pull any punches. She doesn't try to be something she's not. She is so genuine, and she's so authentic, and she's so committed to the vegan movement. That's what I really adore about her. And she rebranded into the Vegan Publisher. And, anytime you make that kind of decision in your business, for those people that are thinking, oh, I'm just going to start calling myself the vegan, whatever. you want to think that through, because once you do, literally put your stake in the ground, own it, and go full board ahead. Don't tippy toe around it. Don't second guess yourself, but really make that commitment, because more than ever, people need those of us who are willing to take a stand, work within this industry so that we can raise the awareness and in our own way do more good for the world. Because when I first became vegan, I thought that I should be a nutritionist. So I got the eCornell certification. Really glad I got it. It helped me to understand myself more and the whole lifestyle more. But then I realized where I could do the greatest good was working with entrepreneurs to help them to grow in their market, so that we could all just keep filtering out and having the greatest influence as possible.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. We want everybody to make sure they visit veganvisibility.com. That is Kathleen's website. And one of the final questions that I love to ask our My Way guests is, obviously, we have those people that are watching. They're sitting at home going like, this sounds really nice. I like the idea of doing things my way, but I feel like I just can't put myself out there like that. What would you tell them?
I love that question. You asked the best questions.
Thank you.
And I would say that if for whatever reason you're holding yourself back, ask yourself why. What's the worst that could happen, and what's the best that could happen if you're willing to put yourself out. But again, look at your motives, because if you're doing it to prove people wrong, if you're doing it to show up somebody, then it's probably for the wrong reasons. If you're really doing it because you're being called to do it, because it is your life's work, because you have been literally touched as the person to do what you're being called to do, go out and do it. Because when you get to the end of your life, I'm looking at the age I am now, and I just saw that the Leave It to Beaver older brother, Wally, he passed away. He was 77 years old, and I'm thinking, life doesn't last forever. And when we get to the end of our life and we look back, are we going to say, I wish I would have, I wish I could have, or are we going to say, I did it, and I did it my way?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kathleen, I can't think of a better person to do my coming back show since I've been off the last couple of weeks with. It has been such a pleasure having you on this evening.
Jessica, this has been delightful. And to everybody who's been on the live stream, thank you so much. And just go out, shine your light, and do what you're here to do.
I love it. I love it. Kathleen, you're welcome back anytime. Can't wait to talk to Metalli next week as well. It's going to be amazing. 2 vegans in a row. What do we do with ourselves over here? I love it.
We're everywhere.
We're taking over. I love it. Well, I also want to remind you guys, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we have an all new episode of Divine DNA with the Jacksons coming up on Thursday as well. You have an all new episode of Learning in Silence with, we saw Mandy out there in the audience, Mandy and Juju. So make sure you guys tune in for that, 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. Eastern time. I'm trying to get used to the Eastern time again, you guys, and I'm failing miserably over here. I keep saying Central first, but I'm trying. Kathleen, thank you again for being here today. Thank all of you that have been here tonight watching or listening wherever you are. Also, my replay viewers, thank you so much. We love you. And I will see you in a couple weeks with Metalli, and I hope you guys have an amazing evening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.